Hi, everybody. This is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. It's Thursday, December 6th, and we're going to talk briefly today about the new moon coming through tomorrow in Sagittarius. So, I like this new moon for a variety of reasons. Let me go ahead and put it up on the screen so that you can see it. So, one of the main reasons that I like this new moon so much is that it's a big Jupiter-themed new moon. It's happening in the middle of Sagittarius. If you're on the West Coast in the United States, it'll happen late tonight on Thursday the 6th, early tomorrow morning on the East Coast on the 7th. But it's happening about the middle of Sagittarius. Big, big deal with Jupiter having recently entered Sagittarius. And then it's square to Mars and Neptune, which are getting together in a conjunction in Pisces, which is also a Jupiter-ruled sign. So you really have this kind of expansive, big, faithful, benefic kind of feeling to this new moon, which I think is nice, especially when you consider that since June, we've had so many planetary retrogrades. The Mars retrograde, there was a Mercury retrograde during the Mars retrograde, then there was a Venus retrograde. Now there was another Mercury retrograde during the Venus retrograde. And it's like on and on, right? Well, Mercury is also stationing, turning direct right now. And that's happening as this new moon is coming through with a lot of sort of Jupiterian lift. So I like this as a big corner that we're turning right now. There's a lot of, I think, positive momentum behind this. There are some things to be careful of, which I'll talk about in a minute. But generally speaking, this new moon has the feeling of restoral or renewal of faith, a sense of remembering something important that may have been forgotten, or a return of vital energy. Part of the reason for this is that Mars and Neptune together in Pisces kind of symbolize the holy vision, that thing that, keeps you up at night in a good way, the thing that keeps you, burning the midnight oil, so to speak, because you have a cause and you have a lot of energy and emotion behind something that you really care about. And that even if you're pouring yourself into something, there's a feeling of being that your energy is inexhaustible because the cause is transcendent. This is the feeling of the holy sort of sacred warrior that theme that Mars and Neptune can bring together. And when you combine that with the Centaur, this new moon in the sign of the Centaur, you really get this feeling of being renewed, being invigorated, and being maybe it's a brand new vision or a brand new sense of mission, or maybe it's a restoral of faith and hope and belief in what you're doing. But there is this kind of promise that is in this, like a holy vow that a knight would take, or the kind of vision of, it has a kind of Joan of Arc feeling to it. So that's all, to me, a very positive sign, especially after, again, we've had so many retrogrades back to back to back, which can mean that there's been, retrogrades are just oftentimes more intense, stressful periods where there are reversals, delays, changes that are somewhat unexpected. That creates seasons of growth, of course, which can be very positive, but retrograde periods, especially when they're back to back to back like that, they're like long interludes. And then suddenly it's a new moon like this can come along. And I see the timing of it as sort of like a sign of turning the page, especially it's at the end of the year. It's happening just, weeks before the winter solstice. As the nodes have just changed sign, new eclipses are coming through. It just feels like a new beginning that's been needed for a while. So I really like this new moon for that reason. Also, you can't forget that a new moon ruled by Jupiter, when Jupiter is in its own sign, with Mars and Neptune conjoining in its own sign. Jupiter is the host of all four of these planets, Sun, Moon, Mars, and Neptune, getting together right now. Jupiter is the one who provides for whatever they need. And Jupiter in Sagittarius is able to provide really beautiful sort of Jupiterian things: vision, faith, inspiration, broadness of vision, generosity, bigness, wisdom, hope. Those are the good fortunate blessings of Jupiter. And again, at this time of year too, it just has that feeling of redemption a little bit, or of, again, of just being invigorated. On the other hand, the thing to be careful of would be where there's a holy crusade, sometimes there's a holy delusion. Mars Neptune can also be the martyr, the sinner, and the saint complex. Someone is such a saint, someone is such a victim, someone is so Christ-like, and it's sort of so annoying. So you have to be careful of Mars Neptune being exhausting you with a mission or vision that's not your own, investing your deepest emotions in some kind of cause that you suddenly are taken by, but maybe isn't that important ultimately. So the delusions of grandeur that can come through right now, this kind of Don Quixote feeling, if you know the story, sort of a warrior meets a buffoon. So we have to be careful of sort of rushing, sort of tilting headlong into a battle that's not necessarily going to do anything for us or for anyone else. So a fool's errand, a fool's crusade, maybe some of that in the mix right now too, as well as just an amplified feeling of a sense of something being more important than it is, or of a puffed up feeling of people believing that they are the savior, the hero motif, especially when people are trying to offer you knowledge and wisdom and support, and it's so grand or exalted, and it wasn't maybe necessarily asked for, or it's more about them feeling high than it is about anything else. Like, for example, I always am trying to be careful of this because obviously I write daily content for a lot of people. It's supposed to be meaningful and uplifting and so forth. But when I scroll through Instagram or Facebook, sometimes you'll see people who are just like, they're talking very publicly, for example, about getting floored by X, Y, and Z energies and experiences. And then a couple of days later, they're broadcasting like the most, I once was lost, but now I'm found. But this cycle itself seems to repeat every week. So, when I was in church as a kid, we used to kind of joke about this, where there would be altar calls at certain kinds of youth group worship services. And certain kids would be like so dramatic that they'd be needing to like go back up and get saved like every week, And it's sort of like, hey, look, being a person of faith, you just got to kind of ride the waves. You don't have to fall down on the altar and beg for mercy every week. The feeling, the kind of confessional angst of this moment, and the feeling of, basically things that are overwhelming and also things that are uplifting, turning into something that's more operatic and maybe too dramatic. That's also there in this new moon. So it's just something to be aware of. And, but there is also a kind of like, I'm down, but I'm not out feeling to this that can be really legitimate. For example, this week I've been really sick, and I've had a number of times where, despite the sickness, I felt so thankful for being sick, because there's been a lot of insights and reminders about impermanence and suffering, and those reminders are really, really nice. So there is something also about suffering and being overwhelmed that is sacred and can actually inspire us. Now, maybe the difference is that it depends on what we're, making sure that we're not allowing our ego to sort of get off on the roller coaster of emotions that are coming through right now. Trying to be reflective, and if we're feeling inspired, that's great. But how are we expressing that and making sure that we don't? It's very tempting when there's a wave of inspiration to try to consume it. Like it's coffee at 8 a.m. and you're starved for energy. You know what I mean? Versus letting it come through us, letting it clean us, letting it heal us and inspire us, and doing something constructive with it. Trying to put it into service in the world or for others. So thinking also about how do we let enthusiasm fill us and do something constructive in the world. That's another good point for this new moon. So those are some of the insights that I have to share for today. I hope this was interesting for everyone. I'm going to leave it there because speaking of overwhelm and being sick, I promised I wouldn't do too much today. So I'm just doing this and then I'm done for the day. And I'll look forward to chatting more with everyone and catching up about the astrology over the weekend. All right. Take care, everyone. Happy new moon.